want to enable a partner, the amount of training that you will have to do to enable the partner to be able to sell that technology, deploy it, maintain it, manage it, right, is phenomenal. And that's what the ecosystem is all about. So these are the different, types of partners, right? You have OEMs from where you may buy a product. You can go to Saiwan and buy a compute platform, or you may buy a networking device, or you may buy a wireless device. These are all OEMs. Value-added resellers, system integrators we talked about, ISVs, cloud providers. These are interesting ones, and these are new. They don't do anything. They buy everybody's technology and say, I will sell it as a service. Okay? So they buy networking switches from Cisco. They buy compute from Cisco or HP. Okay? They may buy some sensors from GE. They'll buy everything. They'll go to a retail customer and say, I will deliver for you. I'll deliver a solution for you. As a service, my consumption model is going to be more related to consumption model. Pricing model is related to consumption. Correct? And they're basically creating these cloud infrastructures, okay, and delivering as a service. But the important thing here, by the way, is your ability to do what is called multi-tenancy in your application. Correct? So if you're building an app which is going to be delivered on the cloud or through the cloud, then your app has to have an attribute called multi-tenancy, which basically means that you should be able to cater to multiple businesses simultaneously and be able to price and bill them separately. Correct? At simplest level. Or be able to provide different types of quality of service. Or be able to provide different levels of services on the same application to multiple customers. And you have a back-end system which actually allows you to differentiate one customer from another. Okay? Although you may have the same instance of the application running on your cloud. Correct? So those attributes are to be built in your, and a lot of cloud service providers actually build multi-tenant clouds because that's a success parameter for us, right? And then you have consultants and you have support specialists, right? So this is the entire sort of ecosystem that you have. And then, you have to be very clear as a product leader as to how you're going to take this product or a technology to the market. That's your go-to-market strategy. Don't confuse that with partnering. You may have an ISV, you may build an application with an ISV, and then you may decide to go to market yourself. And your go-to-market strategy will depend on how the customer wants to consume that technology. And there are a number of go-to-market strategies. I'm sure that you will, learn it as a part of your exec MBA program. It's a very, very essential element of the product strategy as to how are you actually going to the market with, right? With whom are you going to market with? Now, I'll give you an example of cloud. Cisco recently announced that we will also be a cloud service provider, in addition to being an infrastructure provider. Okay? There are fundamentally three models from a go-to-market perspective. One is Cisco will sell direct to the customers or enterprises. We go to the enterprise and say, well, don't worry about your networking infrastructure, we take care of it. We will deploy what we think is right. You will pay us on a subscription model. So instead of an upfront sale, and instead of the entire sort of sale proposition being realized in the first transaction, we are basically just buying the infrastructure ourselves, so to say, and then deploying that infrastructure as the customer needs and manage it centrally, correct? And realize the revenue over 5 years maybe, or 3 years, or whatever that time frame may be. That's one go-to-market model. Second go-to-market model is we can tie up with AT&T and say, you know what, AT&T will provide cloud services, cloud networking services or virtual networking services to its enterprise customers. AT&T's cloud services will be powered by Cisco. Closest that you think about is Intel inside, right? Powered by Intel. The PC runs on an Intel processor. It will be powered by Cisco. So Cisco will put up the entire infrastructure for AT&T, right? AT&T will be the go-to-market vehicle for Cisco's cloud. The third is, a combo of these, which is Cisco and Telstra will be a combined force, will form a legal entity in Australia, okay, to provide cloud services to our enterprise customers. We have just done that actually. We have all the three models. We said we will go direct, which is Cisco Cloud. AT&T is a Cisco powered cloud, Cisco and Telstra is a co-branded offering to an enterprise customer, right? These are your three different go-to-market engines. They work on different cost dynamics. They work on different revenue propositions, okay? Your realization out of these three models may be very, very different, okay? But in certain geographies, one model may be required. In certain other geographies, some other model may be required. In one segment, one model may be required. In some other segment, some other model may be required. This is a subject in itself, right? And you should, as a product leader, really understand what are some of the dynamics behind how do you actually go to market with a product or a technology that you have now put together, right? Because that becomes a very essential aspect. Companies have failed, by the way, because their go-to-market strategies have failed. Okay, they had everything. They had a good product, a good application, a really nice ecosystem, great system integrator. Go-to-market model was bad. Nothing happens. Correct? So it's a very, very important piece again of the entire strategy. And then ISV ecosystem, right? I mean, I can't count the number of ISPs we have, but we have tons of them. And by the way, we do $50 billion. The ISVs do $300 billion on our products. Okay? $300 billion of business on the networking infrastructure, right? Predominantly Cisco networking infrastructure. Now, that's another thing that you have to understand as a product leader, that when you are leading with a product idea, you need to make sure that your ecosystem will be phenomenally successful, sometimes much more than yourself. You may design a product, you may design a solution, okay? The realization for you may be $1 billion, the realization for your ISPs may be $30 billion. Correct? This is another thing that we do not do well as Indians, right? We generally don't do these things very well. We don't make others successful in a much bigger way through the things that we do ourselves. Isn't it? This is one of the sort of cultural issues that sort of pulls the country back dramatically. Because the thought process is, I created the technology, I created the ecosystem, how can the ecosystem make more money than me? Right? That's the thought process. But product leader's thought process has to be, look, I need to be successful and sustainable in the market space. That's much more important than I being instantly successful and the most successful player in the market space. My competitors are my peer competitors in the product space. I need to create an ecosystem which is so successful that my ecosystem the competitors find the entry barriers very, very high. Correct? For that, I may have to strategically make my ecosystem much more powerful and much more successful. So think in these lines, right, as product leaders, not just about the fact that, okay, I have a great product and how do I make most money out of it more than anybody else in the world, right? And then what you'll find again is, that's not the way things will actually pan out, right? Maybe somebody else may be making a ton of other money, but as a consequence of that, somebody else may be successful, okay? In your product category, which may be very small compared to the total amount of dollars that are being made in the larger ecosystem, right? So these are, these are very, very important, right? We work with a very large number of, app ecosystem partners. And by the way, this is going to just dramatically increase going forward for Cisco, correct? Because of virtualization, because of network virtualization, because of consumption models, and because of the type of applications that are going to run on the network, right? So our ecosystem will exponentially increase over the next 3-4 years, right? The good news, by the way, is that we are also $40 million investment fund. So if you have bright ideas, come to the table, okay? And Cisco will invest. But more than that, we've actually been investing in the country for some time, right? And we've actually invested in about 6 or 7 startups already in the ecosystem here, where we are actually a minority stakeholder. Okay, so we always go with a co-investor. We take a smaller, stake in the company, and we actually work with the, company to make it successful, right, and make it part of our ecosystem. All right, so these are all the, you've seen this on different slides, but if you really look at the ISVs, from Cisco context, these are all the areas in which there are tremendous amount of opportunities already. Now let's talk a little bit about, if you are a product leader, what is the ecosystem that you are dealing with, right? Product management, everybody understands that in this room, hopefully. Go-to-market, we talked about it. Sales engine, obviously. Product development. Then, this can actually make or break you, okay, being or not being competitive in the marketplace. Same product today can be made, if your supply chain is really, really powerful, the same product can be made at 30 to 40% less costs than your competitors. Okay? Strategically, it's a very important piece, and many companies don't have a good supply chain in India, right? So something to focus on. Manufacturing, obviously, very on manufacturing. What's the cost of manufacturing, and can you actually save a few dollars from your costs, right, in the manufacturing setup? And most importantly, who's your customer? Whom are you actually selling with? By the way, a lot of companies fail because they end up selling to a wrong stakeholder. Today, if you go and sell to an IT person, you may actually fail. You might have to sell to a business owner. Okay? If you're selling something to a business owner, maybe that landscape may change. You may have to sell to a proprietor. Right? It depends. But knowing whom you are going to sell a particular product idea is very, very important. So keep asking yourself, who is your customer really? Okay? Is the consumer your customer? Is the enterprise your customer? Is your service provider? Maybe cloud. In case of cloud, in case of Cisco, right? AT&T may be your, basic customer, not the enterprise to whom you were directly selling with so far. Cloud changes the whole dynamics about who your customer is, right? If AT&T is going to, sell enterprise networking services to customers, then whoever was Cisco's customers before now will become AT&T's customer, and AT&T becomes our biggest customer, right? So you have to keep cognizance of the fact that your customer may be changing for the same product line that you may have from time to time, okay? And then obviously, what are the business outcomes that you are driving, and what is the consumption model of the artifact that you have created, okay? And the artifact may be a product, a solution, an entire ecosystem, but what is the consumption model, okay? Now, look, at least in Cisco, this is an area where we are trying to invest the maximum amount of energies, which is product mindset, okay? Fundamentally, we come from a very services-oriented mindset, okay? And these are the attributes that we are trying to, sort of inculcate in the workforce. Ownership and accountability. By the way, in the software business, right, the ownership is a very often used cliche. I own this component. I own that product. This product is almost entirely done out of India, so I own it. You talk to the corporate, they'll say, no, you don't. Why? Who makes the decision on that product? You own the technology execution. That doesn't mean that you actually own the product. And by the way, what do you own? Do you own the technology? Do you own the partner? Or do you own the customer? Or do you own the customer sat? What do you actually own? Correct? If you are truly a product owner, you are owning customer satisfaction. Correct? If you are truly a product owner, you are losing sleep over the fact that some competitor is, sort of hitting at your heels, not the fact that you have a bug in your product. Correct? So the dynamics changes dramatically depending on whether you really and truly own technologies and products yourself. And are you taking accountability for it, right? Are you taking accountability for customer sat, really? Are you the person responsible for customer satisfaction in your company for a particular product line? If the answer is no, most likely you're not owning the product. Okay? So it's something to understand, right? Skill set and knowledge. We seem to say that I know almost all of it, therefore my skill set is very high. Again, the answer is wrong. Okay? There is a pyramid of learning. The what, the how, and the why. Most people get satisfied by knowing what and the how, especially people in software field, right? What is being done and how it is being done. I know the code, inside out. So my skill set is high. Answer is no, right? Because do you really know why it is done the way it is done, and what will you change going forward? And then obviously lastly the innovation DNA, right? So look, there are lots of differences. This is something that you may already be knowing based on your backgrounds. Lots of differences being working in a product organization and a services organization. Okay? Not that there are, one is better than the other, they are just different. Okay? And understanding what you are trying to create, a service or a product, okay, or a solution is very, very important. Let me sort of skip a little faster and see whether I can give you some time for question and answers.
Amit, I think we'll post the, we have a short felicitation, so we have a separate Q&A session and also a panel discussion.
Okay.
So we'll do it as part of that.
All right, thank you.
So, thanks Amit, that was a pretty insightful talk. So, I had to make a real mental note of, so probably I think.
Thanks.
So, I just made a quick mental note of what all things. So, guys, that was a pretty exciting and insightful talk from Amit. So, he told us like, I wish he had covered this as before the exam so that we could have read better there. So all the go-to-market and all the leadership and all those talks would have helped us there. So it is very insightful that a big corporation like Cisco also is vulnerable to all these changing business models and targets. So that's very powerful insight that we derived from this session. So guys, one thing is leadership. So Amit was if you had noticed, Amit was very conscious about using the term leadership instead of using a term like technology manager or something like that. So it was a conscious decision by Amit, I guess, because leadership and management is slightly different. So I would statement that leadership is a rare commodity. So do you guys agree? You guys will be telling, okay, there are so many B schools out there and so many professionals coming out there. What the crap are you talking? So that's not true. So the B schools deliver managers, but IPL is different here. In turn, IPL gives out leaders, brings out leaders. Leadership is never rare in IPL today, right? So with this, so now I'll prove a point here. So now there is an outgoing batch of budding leaders from IPL today. We are out there to felicitate the ICPM batch of 2014. So I would invite my classmate and Pugal out here. So Pugal happens to be, we are privileged to have Pugal as part of our class. He is CTO, Chief Technology Officer of JP Morgan Cares. And
it's very inspiring. Before we I got a lot of questions in my head, right? The market transition, economic transition, right? Technology transition, and the 84% of the company stock. A lot of questions hitting my mind. The next important event, and then jumping into the Q&A session. So I am very happy and proud to be part of the executive MBA class, right? To felicitate and facilitate the certificate and the certification, right? The certificate, receiving the certificate of ICPM, International PG Certificate. International PG Certificate of Product Managers and Marketing, recognized by AIPMM. I'll first invite Ashish Mathur from McAfee. He's from Ashish Mathur. Hi. Lead. After finding a lot of bugs, he got bitten by the product bug, and now he's graduating from ICPM. Satish Sinha, so I want to tell you, so he is very adamant to receive this certificate from you, graduating his Cisco. Graduated with ISB, right, and got bitten by the product bug. ICPM graduate, she's a product manager with ICALTIS Security. Arun Kumar Snyder. Snyder is a power company, right? Now your certificate, get ready to talk about one of the products. So there's a total of 18 people, so 4 of them received the certificate today. Right? So without further ado, I'm going to be, again guys, excuse me, who is not part of the executive MBA, I'm going to be biased at least for the next few minutes towards my class cohorts. Right? So I'm going to go with the questions first, and then obviously you go in the back and then give you an opportunity to ask questions. And in the interim, if any of you is interested about our experience in the executive MBA program, please feel free to ask me. All of my cohorts are sitting here during this session as well as part of the networking session. Alright, Manish?
I'm with Manish. One question, I can't say whether it's a good question, simple or tough question, it's for you to decide. But what I wanted to know, it was very insightful talk that you gave. I've been following Cisco for quite some time. So I was interested in knowing what is your prediction about the custom hardware business of Cisco in view of the technology shifts on the NFC side of things. How do you see the custom hardware business heading in what direction?
Yeah, I would say, look, our view of SDN and cloud is a little different from what the industry is talking about at this point, right? We talk to most of the industry and especially our competitors, they will say we're going to cannibalize Cisco's business by moving the intelligence from the network into the cloud. Okay? We feel that that's fundamentally flawed. And I would like Pamela is not actually, so she can counter me on this if you want. But the reason why we feel that is, look, at the end of the day, what is the customer looking for? Customer is not looking for shifting the total cost of ownership from capex to the cloud. That's not what the customer is really looking for, right? There has to be something that we deliver which is phenomenally more than what a traditional networking gear has been able to deliver. Because unless you are able to show that incremental value, right, or a phenomenally different value, okay, there is not going to be any new dollar that is going to get created. And there is no new dollar created, right? If there is no new value, there is no new dollar created. If there is no new dollar created, the same dollar can change hands. It can go from here to here, right? But again, let's say that you take the dollar from here and give it here. At $48 billion, that's what you take it off. Okay? Because Cisco will become zero, somebody else will become 48, and most likely that's only a single entity. It will get split. Maybe $5, $7 million or $10 million company will get paid. It's not increase the value in the system. Our view is that in the cell phone business there are two models today. Okay, one is the iPhone model. iPhone is a vertically integrated stack. Why is the vertically integrated stack? It's actually closed. It's closed to everybody outside of their ecosystem, but it's open to everybody inside the ecosystem. And they create huge amount of value, okay, on a vertically integrated stack. What does a vertically integrated stack mean? That if you are developing an app on an iOS, you pretty much have deep understanding of what iPhone or Apple really offers to you in terms of infrastructure. And you can actually develop an app which makes use of that entire vertical stack to your benefit. Therefore, your app runs on Apple much better. One of the things that Apple sells today is not apps, it's ease of use. Right? One of the biggest things about Apple is ease of use. It's great. Right? Things just work. Second is Android. Okay? Android is a horizontally integrated stack. What does that really mean? I am making Android as an operating system without regards to what hardware is out there in the market. Anyone can come in, attach to my operating system, it's open, and do whatever they want. It's also a successful, business. Very, very successful business. Okay? And both are going to be successful. Right? The difference between Cisco and most of the other white label switch vendors or route vendors is the difference between the vertically integrated stack and the horizontally integrated stack. We have, we carry about 90% of the internet traffic today on our gear. Okay? About 92-93% of all all networking were deployed ever in the world is Cisco. Correct? So we have the advantage of the installed base, not boasting. It's just the advantage that we need to make use of. The second thing is that we've integrated our stack from ASICs. So, we build our own ASICs. Our top end switches and our top end, routers, all of them run on the ASICs that we built. Now, essentially what we've done over the last few years is we've opened the interfaces on the ASICs. We opened the interfaces on the protocol layers. We opened the interfaces in the middle layer. Correct? And what is sitting on top called the SDN controller. The advantage of that is if you're writing an app on an SDN controller, or if you're writing an app which is cloud-based, you not only have the entire visibility of the end-to-end network, but you can go vertically down to an ASIC level, right? To control what's really happening at a device or an ASIC level or at the network level. And that entire control is used. Right? So essentially what we are saying is that our deployed base of 90-98%, let's unlock the value that is there and unlock that value to an application. That's where we are also initiating called ACI. Right? Application centric infrastructure. And the whole idea is that because of the fact that I'm sitting outside of the network as a server on the host server, okay? And I'm virtualized, and I have certain functions I have virtualized. Things that are virtualized are topology, okay? End-to-end visibility of the network. The other thing that we have virtualized is the deep understanding of what's really happening down to an ASIC level, okay? Quality of service, security, right? Are things that we're trying to mention because quality of service is end-to-end. Security is end-to-end. To talk to any of the large enterprise today, they will tell you that one of our biggest challenges is that Buzzing Range is doing a broadcast to all of it. The IT team has to run helter skelter, okay, to make sure that that particular IPTV broadcast actually goes to the end stations uninterrupted and with a good quality of service, right? And they have to actually touch hundreds of devices. There are hundreds of people deployed to make sure that that conference call goes well. This is the type of thing that you can do very well if you have end-to-end visibility of the network sitting on a controller, and if you have a deep, understanding of how you control the network up to a basic level. At a click of a button, you can do actually you can write an application. You should make use of the horizontals as well as the horizontals and the verticals to actually make quality of service. Right? So we feel that we are actually set exceedingly well to capture the market, not lose the market.
Amit, this is Kumar from Now, the breaking speed of innovation moving, and most of the MNCs, the product department seems to be in the US or probably outside of India. How are these captive units like the development centers in India tying up back to the company in terms of influencing some of the changes in the ecosystem to get the product decision done?
By recruiting a lot of product management people in India. One of the gaps that we are trying to bridge is the gap of a product manager, right? See, we are doing a lot of engineering work. We have done traditionally, right? Solutions companies are done, a lot of multinationals are done in India. What we are now trying to do is conceptualize what needs to be built. Okay? The good news is that the market in this region, the emerging countries as well as India, is a very good place to be for the next 20 years. Right? Opportunities are big. We are at a lower base with the growth rates predicted are higher. It's a different thing that last year has been bad, or last 2 years have been bad in emerging countries overall, but the potential is very, very high. So the ability to really conceptualize what should be built next is very key. And for that we need to invest in product leaders and product managers. Fundamentally. Engineering talent has always existed. Right? They always build what somebody has asked them to build. Right? Who is asking them to build has been sitting in the US. You need to sort of move that point into India so that who is asking them to build has the thought of here. Right? And that's a transition that many of the companies are doing.
This is Sushma here. We looked at all the numbers and how many companies sustain the growth and moving into multi-million. So if you can think of in the past 10 years of Cisco, one challenge that Cisco faced, the major one, and how you could overcome that and sustain that business.
Yeah. I don't know how many Cisco people are here, but let me say this. I think the biggest challenge that we have had is our own success. Okay? The reason for that is, success breeds behaviors, and behaviors breeds inertia, and that becomes very difficult to change. Right? I'll tell you an example, right? Cisco has been extremely successful building switches and routers, okay, and wireless devices as isolated entities. We have had business unit structures which have been immensely successful, okay. We have built in redundancies, duplications, correct, in the process, and now the customers are basically saying, look, I don't want a router, I don't want a switch, I want a virtualized service, I want a different consumption model. Needs a dramatic change in the behavior inside the company, as well as outside, okay? And if you are very successful, see, if you are not successful, it's very easy to change, okay? You can say, well, you screwed up, now get out of the way, okay? If you are very, very successful, you are sitting on a 70%, 65% margin business, okay? You're pulling in, billions of dollars cash every quarter, and your growth rates are still very, very high. To go and tell someone saying that, what, we should change because something is not right out here. It's a very difficult thing. So the biggest challenge that Cisco has, and by the way, I think it has been a challenge for most of the large successful companies, is its own success and its inability to quickly change. And we are actually trying very hard to actually change the landscape dramatically inside the organization.
Hi, Amit. This is Gopal. How is Cisco seeing localization in India in our app account?
So we see it as a huge opportunity. See, look, one of the things that we have done wrong, and many of the other companies have done wrong too, is that typically the way we approach this market is we take a product that is made in the US for the US, and then we try to sell it cheaper, okay, or make it cheaper. One of the two things we try to do. When we try to make it cheaper, what do? We actually go open the box, we try to remove things from it and try to reduce the BOM, okay, and hope that the product will perform better. Okay, we remove security features, okay, we remove airbags from the cars, okay, we do all sorts of things, okay, and sell it cheaper in the market. The approach required is very different, right? You need to see what is really required in the market and build a product down up, and you realize that you can actually build a product much cheaper than what you have in your table, okay, and that product will be good quality product. So we don't want to make cheap products. We want to make good products at the right price point, and that we are not succeeded doing, right? So if you really ask me, that's a huge opportunity for every company, right? The market here is big, the asks are very different, the consumption models are different, the SMB space in India is very, very large, okay? The problem is, none of the companies have been able to really make the right product at the right price point, or the right products or solutions at the right price point.
So if I may, sorry, thank you. So great example, like what we heard from Amit on value creation and value extraction that we picked up from Western One case. With that, we are moving into the audience. Please. We have that, yeah.
Hi, this is Bhargav here. Quick question on continuation on what you said about the cloud. Is Cisco's view of the cloud more similar to try and build a walled garden approach that Apple has, wherein you get the apps and build the apps, help out the ecosystem by actually qualifying the apps? Wouldn't that be sort of more cumbersome in terms of iOS is basically for mobile devices and it has smaller footprints, whereas we are trying to build huge, probably mission-critical apps over here, and Cisco is probably trying to take ownership and delivering value. How is that different to companies who are building on OpenFlow or OpenContrade and stuff like that? By the way, just to clarify, I'm from Juniper, so.
Yeah, so look, I think the approach is very clear, right? I don't think it's a walled garden. A walled garden is going to create a completely closed ecosystem, right? We are not saying that, hey, if you are an application developer on Cisco, you can't develop an application on Juniper, or you can't develop an application on engineers or anybody else. Right? What we're basically saying is that will you deep visibility vertically as well as horizontally? It will make your life as an application developer a lot more effective. Right? It's a value prop. Right? So that's the approach that we are trying to take. I'm sure that Juniper has a similar approach from what I have seen so far, right? But there is a lot of technology built in the ASICs, more so than in the systems, right? Because it's routing and information there. Now, there are two ways, right? One is I can say that I will take this and throw it in the cloud. The other is, can I make effective use of this, right? Create something down the network which is not more effective than what happens with the individual device that is running. So that really is the sort of approach that is wanted.
Hi. Hey, good afternoon. My name is Puneet. I'm from Bosch Engineering Business Solutions. Firstly, great talk by the way. Very encouraging to know about Cisco's attitude towards partners and the ecosystem. I have a question that is twofold. First one is one of the topics you mentioned on Internet of Everything. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you recently launched an IoT lab in your office in Electronic City. First question is, who are the key stakeholders do you think who will exist in the IoT landscape? Second question is on the pricing models of that. The biggest challenge for IoT or even in a related way telematics is the solution is fine, but how do you monetize it? The question is who is going to pay for it? The customer wants the OEM to pay for it, OEM wants the service provider to pay for it. So how has that question been addressed by Cisco?
Absolutely. And we haven't really addressed it fully yet. Okay, so let me be chatting about it. So look, who are the stakeholders? I think there are multiple stakeholders here, right? First is IoT. IoT, by the way, the difference between IoT and IoE, just so that everybody is on the same page, is that things, process, people, and data forms IoE. Internet of things, Internet of people, Internet of processes, and Internet of data, right? All of this put together is IoE, what we call IoE or what we call this is Internet. Okay? So who are the stakeholders, right? The stakeholders clearly are the sensor makers, the actuator makers, people who are actually making these smart devices which are intelligent and which are connected on that. They are the first set of stakeholders. Second set of stakeholders are companies or utilities which are deploying these sensors to generate data. Third set of stakeholders are companies which are transporting this data in motion. The fourth set of stakeholders here are people who are analyzing the data, analytics, right? And the fifth set of stakeholders are applications which are actually using the analytics, okay, to create or to form business decisions. So these are clearly 5 different sets of stakeholders in the IoT game, correct? And that's why more than ever, our ecosystem is very important than a very large product company. Most large product companies are not going to build a sensor business. It's a very different model. It doesn't work. I don't think that Cisco will actually become a sensor vendor, right? It requires a very different DNA, scale, margins, everything. So we will most likely partner with the sensor vendor. We are also never going to become an application business, right? So we have to partner with the application. So there are going to be 5 or 6 stakeholders, and anybody who wants to succeed in the IoE space, you have to really form a good ecosystem. Okay? And as ecosystem, we have to work very closely to deliver business solutions. The second part of your question was, what's the monetization? Right? And that's a really good question. When we tried with you, nobody has really figured it out very well. I'll give you an example. Smart cities. Okay? Smart cities, a city will be like a 10 million to a $40 million industry. Right? You want to create a smart city. Where is this investment going to go? It's going to go into data centers, to the cloud, and all of it. It's going to go into large number of applications. It also is going to go into sensors. Who is going to make the money? Do you know? I don't know. I don't know who will make the money. Maybe the application vendor will make the money. Right? The infrastructure guys will make the money because the outcome may deploy the infrastructure anyway. Right? So you will actually make some money. The sensor guys will make the money. But how is the money going to be paid? That's the most important thing. I don't think the city is going to go buy infrastructure and sit on it. It's very unlikely, right? But the city is going to put out tenders for services, right? And probably the ecosystem They have to deliver services to make the money. Okay? So the buying and selling will happen between different entities. But ideally, you should really, as an ecosystem or a consortium, attack water management, let's say, in the city. A very good sort of IoT, IoE case. Can you really deploy a water management solution? Okay? Now, if you deploy a water management solution, is a Bangalore BBMP going to pay you $1 billion? I don't think so. Right? But what the BBMP may be willing to do is, if you really deploy an intelligent, water management solution all the way from the end consumer, all the way to BBMP, then they will say that, look, I will allow you to attach your sensor to the water meter, okay? And I will allow you to sort of take a part of that particular revenue that comes from water billing every month, correct? And you figure out as a part of the consortium as to how the economics of that comes out for you, isn't it? So I think the business models are going to be very consumption-based in the smart city. Another very good example, right? In a smart city, people are talking about intelligent parking solutions. Who's going to pay? Municipal corporation? I don't think so. The car owners will pay. Correct? If there is an intelligent app built which is on the dashboard, which tells you at any point in time, 100 meters around you, okay, where is an empty parking place? And what is the route to that parking place? Okay? Will you be willing to pay maybe 200 rupees or 250 rupees every month to that app provider? The answer is most likely yes. Because it's a nightmare to do many places, right? It's 50 rupees, I don't care, right? If there is a real cool application that is on sitting on the dashboard, that is integrated with Google Maps, that's integrated with some voice system, okay, that can really seamlessly direct you to an intelligent parking place, right? Who's making the money? Consortium will have to make the money, right? The app vendor is a very important part of the consortium. The dashboard guy is an important guy. The sensor guy is an important guy. There is a sensor in the parking place, right? Which detects whether there is a car here or no car here, right? That guy. Everybody has to make the money. This is going to be a very different game than buying a computer, taking a computer and selling it to somebody. So this is an ecosystem play. It's going to be driven mostly by apps. And it's going to be driven by consumption models rather than and pay per use rather than large infrastructure capital layouts and buyouts. Right? That's my view right now. I don't know whether it will exactly pan out that way.
Hi, Amit.
Sorry guys, just to be aware, make sure like you guys are up, you're there. So just to make yourself aware, right? So the quick logistics. So if you want to ask your next question, please raise your hand. My couple of my cohorts is behind you. So they'll take care of it. Sorry.
Hi Amit, this is Arjuman from Electronics Network. We are basically into connecting high potential startups, primarily technology startups to the corporates. So I would like to understand more about the $40 million fund which was recently launched by Cisco. Is it just to directly invest in startups, or are you also trying to launch a corporate incubator or an accelerator? I'd love to know more.
I don't know whether we'll launch a corporate incubator. That has always been on a discussion table, inside Cisco for a long period of time. But we will invest in startups which are related to our ecosystem. Certainly. And we do believe that there are going to be a lot of startups coming out of India, very smart people, okay? And we're actually already doing that in mobility, in cloud, in video, in big data, and in analytics, okay? And obviously security maybe, right? The sixth one. But these are some of the areas in which we'll be very active in the sort of investment stage, our startup perspective.
Okay, and when you say early stage startups, it could even mean at a prototype stage.
Generally, we don't invest that early, okay? We're typically invested in companies which are already in revenue, although the revenues will be very small, okay? So companies which have a product, which has a proven product, which has already been deployed, it will be a small revenue. Those are the type of companies that we are typically invested in. But you know what? If we really like an idea, it's really early. I don't think we are averse to investing in it at all. Even if it's in a prototype stage.
Alright, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Bhairav here. Since you are gentle to answer questions which are not directly to the topic, I will take some words here. Most of what you have been telling us is
apps and the applications are driving the standards and industry platforms today. Right from the applications that you talk about to open cloud to open compute, things which are not being done by the hardware vendors is being defined by the software or the right application vendors or application users. To companies like Cisco and Unix and Juniper and lot more. And a lot of it is being changed, or the ecosystem is changing because of the open source software, which is sort of killing or not really killing, put your hard word, but not allowing the pure hardware vendors to sell software and hardware both. How does Cisco see the open source software
So
role?
look, when I say applications, I don't mean application in the traditional sense. It's a software piece. When I say application, I'm really talking about business outcome. Okay? What we are going to sell more and more is a business outcome. And yeah, in a computing world, in an automated world, a business outcome always has an application attached. Right? For example, if you want to sort of promote, products on cell phones in a retail in a mall, okay, and somebody enters the mall, you want to engage, that person, some sort of a conversation on his cell phone, and depending on the location of that person in the mall, you want to send promos, to the cell phone. You're actually selling a business outcome, you're not selling an application. In that sense, we feel that, more and more it will be application centric, okay, because it's business outcome centric. Now, by the way, it is not that Cisco cannot do applications, right? It's not our strategy, that's not our core competency. We don't do that, right? And I don't think we will build applications in that space. But we will enable the infrastructure to be able to carry the application much more better, right? And I think this is a part of every consulting strategy, right? You don't want to do everything. The temptation that you have is, oh, you know what, there's revenue there, there's revenue there, there's revenue here. Why don't I take all the revenue? And typically you are not good at doing everything on your own, right? So you have to work with the ecosystem. You have to decide particularly what you are good at. You have to decide where will you actually work with your ecosystem as a partner. And each part of the ecosystem can be also your competitor, right? Then form your forces and go to market accordingly.
Yeah, I have a question. So I want to focus back on your Narendra Modi slide on the broadband priority. Right? So if you look at history, we were getting these Alcatel technology back manufactured at ITI, and we were not taking up those 6 to 10 year waiting list to get a telephone line in the 80s. Right? Then the CDOT was formed, we designed our own telecom switch, put it in the network for about 50 million lines, created STD booths, and we felt that we have made some headway in telecom. Then the mobile, in 10 years after mobile technology was mature, we got into the journey with the Airtel model of new business model. We have improved technology, and really, if you look at it at the ground level, it's all Huawei based. Whether it's Vodafone or Idea or anybody or Airtel, they're getting the Huawei base stations, and that's what we have all. And that's made the 40% call happen. Right? So the STD booths was the solution for telecom. The 1 rupee 50 paisa call, right? Even that call, the 40% per minute solution through Airtel has come using Huawei base stations. And now we are at the verge of the broadband revolution. Today the reality is that in my own home, I'm paying 1,200 rupees to BSNL, another 1,000 to BSNL, another 1,000 to my 3G service provider. I'm trying everything, and I end up with I have two connections or whatever. I end up paying 7,000 to 8,000 rupees per month, but I still don't have a reliable network. Comparatively in the US, okay, my relatives are paying $70, $80 per month and getting 100 MB home reliable service. I'm struggling to get 10 Mbps reliability to mine. It's a huge opportunity for companies like Cisco. So what is your vision on how you're going to take advantage of this? What's the kind of vision?
So I will have two or three things, right? I think you already mentioned this in your question itself. But if you really look at, see, you want to talk about this urban areas, and you have challenged there. Look at remote areas. You've actually talked to customers a lot, people like HPCL, BPCL, for example, or petrol companies across the country and the landscape. The biggest problem today is, hey, look, we're trying to sell you a router. That's like $1,000. Look at it, right? $1,000 router in a remote village, somewhere in Rajasthan, in the middle of the desert, where 9 hours a day there is no power. Okay? We've got a requirement where one of the customers says, hey, in one of the slots in the router, can you put a battery pack? Seriously, it was a serious example. Okay? Saying that, can you actually take one slot in your router, and instead of putting a networking blade or a compute blade, can you actually put a battery blade? 9 hours a day, there is no power there. But what's about connectivity, right? So look, I think, there are two parts of your question, right? What will make this broadband revolution happen is not connectivity. Connectivity will eventually happen. But like you said, the PCO made it happen. The PCO was the app, by the way. Who owned the infrastructure? The PCO guy owned the infrastructure, not the end user, right? And he made some services happen around it. And that's what revolution I said. In case of broadband, the broadband app has to be delivered as a kiosk, right? In a small village, one is you can give connectivity to home, that's a different thing. But can you actually bring a doctor here? Can you bring the bank here? Okay? Can you bring insurance near it because you have broadband connectivity? Then you are talking business, right? Today, by the way, we have 6 or 7 different buildings, right? In the units. You have doctor in, you have a healthcare unit, state of art, everything is there, right? The doctor is there in one building. In the other buildings, we are using televisions to treat, people who will walk into our healthcare center. In the villages, I have friends who are running an NGO who actually take a doctor from Bangalore to a village every 15 days. That's the only day on which the doctor is available in the village. That's it. That's it. Right? Now, imagine if broadband as a technology can actually bring a remote doctor to the village every day and make it affordable and make it equal to the 40 paisa conversation. Right? Can you actually deliver a healthcare service at 10 rupees or 40 rupees, whatever it can be right now, right? In the villages. So, kiosks or equivalent of that, right? Using broadband, where a number of these services can come together and be delivered in a relevant manner to the business, is going to be really revolutionizing the broadband. Not connectivity, right? I mean, look, people can see TV channels on IPL, and that may actually happen. But that only has so much of value. There are real problems, that need to be solved using broadband. And unless those apps are available, I don't think this will succeed. So my sense is that either some companies have to come down. All the rest
Amit, you go to Narayan Sudhya, okay? They have a tele-health center on the top. This guy, Devi Shetty and his team, they come 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the afternoon. I'm telling you, this is the story of 2005.
No.
2005, 2006. And he was connecting to all the 40 districts of Karnataka. He had telepresence with the Ramaya Hospital. They have run a remote clinic for, and what they do, every hour in the morning and evening, these heart specialists come. They evaluate in the district hospitals. There is a guy who's done also. The ECG reports are coming online. The patient is there on a video link. Okay, they communicate, and there are 2 types of decisions they are making. They're making decision on whether this guy needs to come to the hospital. So they have a bus service. They send buses and they bring them there for care. And once they've been operated and sent out, they're looking back and giving them post-operative. Those applications are all there.
But as that current is one example, you need maybe thousands of
Infrastructure.
Look, I tell you that the broadband infrastructure is easier to put in once you put the money. I don't think that the connectivity will just solve the problem, if you ask me.
So here is another view, right? When we were struggling in telecom, your Siemens, Nokia, India, AT&T, 20,000 rupees per line, per line was the cost, right? In C-Dot we made it 5,000 rupees. ZTE and Huawei brought it down to sub 1,000. And that's when things picked up, right?
But that's what I said earlier, that look, you can't take product made in the US, right, and sell it in India at a lower cost. You need to build some products around stuff.
Look at this Xiaomi phone today, right? In Flipkart, what happened? They just brought a 40,000 rupee phone to 14,000 rupees and they created they crashed the website.
No, but I think that's what, but to your point about technology, see there are two pieces that we're talking about, right? One is technology and what cost will make it available. Second is the apps exist and whether they should viable business model. Okay. Apps will happen if the technology is provided and the technology is provided at the right price.
What is a company like Cisco going to do to take this broadband opportunity? Can a company like Cisco do it or will Huawei and Lenovo do it? I think that's the question.
There are three possibilities. You can do it. Okay. There are three possibilities. One is Cisco will do it or HP will do it. Okay. Second is maybe one of the Asian vendors will do it. Third is maybe an Indian company will do it. Okay. All three possibilities exist. We are doing a lot right now, preparing ourselves to be able to deliver to this particular market. Right? Whether we will be successful or not, we don't know it. The next 3-4 years will tell. Right? But the opportunity clearly exists. And it's not less than $1 billion opportunity for a product segment alone. Forget the apps in the country. Right? So product leaders in this group are looking for business opportunity. This is a great opportunity.
Recently, NOFM project has been launched where UDL is actually building a network for BPL.
Basically, you're looking at nano in the broadband market.
But see, look, again, it's not cheap. Don't try to make a cheaper product. Try to make the product at the right functionality, at the right price point. But not a cheaper product. I'll tell you, if I'm trading a router right now, I would not make a cheaper router. I will actually make a router which has its required functionality in a remote area, but which is very application rich. There is ability to host powerful applications, which traditional routers don't do. Very, very important. Right? So, don't see, I think the nano spread made to a large extent because we try to make a cheaper car. Okay? We need to make a car which is at the right price because probably it was not important to make it for 1 lakh. We have been putting to make it for 3 lakhs maybe, right? So buying power of the community has anyway gone up dramatically, but make a much more sort of reliable car and functional than what it is, right? I mean, I don't want to criticize that, right? It's a great experiment, but that's what is required in the Indian market. Not a cheaper product. I'm actually against, I've been in a lot of conversations in Cisco about how to build. I'm totally against making cheaper products. To be honest. That's not a solution. C-Dot did not make a cheaper product. We did no, because the product was built around some. But the product is very reliable. It does have
in terms of features, more features, it was probably better than the West, right?
But it was made for Indian customers, right? You take a router made in the US today, put it on the pole top in Bombay, it will go out in less than 6 months. That's the reality.
Okay. Sorry, on the right? You're not ending the equipment, right? You're just moving. Before we move, right outside this room, before we move, quick two announcements, right? We have Anjali Desai, who is head of UX designer in Intuit US. It will be here on August 3rd. Registration is open. That's a quick information. Please, if you're interested, sign up. And I'd like to invite Mr. Ramanan to hand over the small gift to Mr. Ramanan.
I have one question. This is all the Internet of Things. We are looking into different areas, not just the IT, the manufacturing and other things. Do we have skills which are looking both at the manufacturing and also IT to come with innovative products and solutions in those areas?
There was a company that I listed on my slide. The name of the company is Coaxis.
Okay.
Based out of Mumbai.
Okay.
Actually, it was incubated at IIT Bombay.
Okay.
We found them about the US and we invested in them from Cisco. These guys actually are in the manufacturing space. So they connect to machines in textiles, cement, healthcare, oil and gas, any machine.
So that's a limited one. I am happy to know that I will go and check it out. But effectively, if you are looking at Internet of Things, the way we are scaling and the way the Internet scaling we are talking about, we need lot more people. Like the Nayan and the other, you said that's one instance. This is one instance, right? So how are we going to have the skills? And if I look at the broadest landscape across the world, the US doesn't do manufacturing. They don't have the manufacturing insight. They do the technological insights, great. The Asian countries have the manufacturing insights, great. And how is it going to balance? Any of your thoughts, looking from a broader Cisco perspective?
I don't know. I don't have any more intelligence than what you seem to have, but
No, any insights, anything you are trying to do as Cisco when you talk about Internet of Things, you talk about 4 different Internet of Things, Internet of People, Internet of, couple of things. This is a space for all the Internet.
So what, I'll tell you what Cisco is trying to do, right? We know this game has to be vertical. Okay? As much as it's a horizontal technology, it also has to be taken because domain specifics are important. So if you are clearly identifying verticals against which you are going to go, right? Manufacturing is a big one, oil is a big one, oil and utilities, smart grid is a very big one, healthcare, smart cities and communities, right? These are, there are more of them probably, but these are 4 or 5 that we are. The second thing we are very clear is we are not going to be in every part of the solution, right? The way to go about this particular market is identify the vertical, form an ecosystem in that vertical, get the best players on the table, create a solution, and then discuss go-to-market models, consumption models, and pricing.
So are you helping to build ecosystem in the area?
Yeah. Continuing this conversation, I'm not ending the conversation.
No. The question is for all. Are you building an ecosystem for one of these areas?
Yes.
Thank you.
It was a great talk by Dr. Amit. Give a round of applause again. He talked elegantly about the partner ecosystem, how it's important, how the mindset needs to change from a product leadership. Very happy to have you, Amit.